to another edition of Pitching In, the podcast covering your first place Pittsburgh Pirates and other things. I'm Jason Mackey alongside Michael Mckenry, and we're not even making that up. The Pirates are in first place, at least for a little bit longer. Enjoy it while it lasts. We're going to dig into this start, man, but I don't know. What do you think about this whole thing, big picture? Like, are the Pirates for real? Is any of this sustainable? How are you? I don't know. I'm thinking Pirates and not asking how you're doing, but what's going on, man?
I'm good. Been busy. We had an off day, which means honey-do list, which is always good. I like doing stuff with my hands and put a bed together, put some chairs together.
Bed from where? IKEA?
I have no clue. I don't buy the bed. Mama buys the bed. I just put things together and try not to have too many pieces left over. And that guy that has it. Say what?
How many freakouts? Like how many,
no freakouts.
Throwing something, breaking something? No.
Have you ever seen that commercial where he puts together the playground set? He's like, I did it. Yes. And then it just falls down.
No.
That's kind of, me in handiwork. Yeah. But I've learned over time, it's been a couple decades. I've figured out a couple things, made some big mistakes, but I'm good, man. I can't believe how well they're playing. I think the pitching's the one thing that's really stood out to me, and how surprised I am with the growth. It seems like every single time they're doing something different, a way to combat whoever they're facing. I mean, just look at what Rich Hill and Velasquez did against Cincinnati, and they almost changed the way that they pitched against those guys completely from the time before. Obviously, they struggled, but you just don't see that. Usually guys don't leave the trends. They don't leave, anything, and these guys are learning how to compete, and they want to win. I think it's the best Major League Baseball collective team I've seen in a long time. They actually love each other. It's a brotherhood. That doesn't happen very often. I use the White Sox all the time. Mackey is a great example. All the talent in the world, and they keep losing.
Yeah.
What about you?
I would completely agree with that. I've been around quite a few teams in different sports. This is absolutely at the top of the list in terms of likability and mix of good players, obviously, but that camaraderie and togetherness, I think, is really, really, really impressive. And I think it does count for something. And I think there's a certain belief that the Pirates have right now that they didn't have in the past. Like, they had talented players, but they didn't have any sort of belief in themselves. And I think Andrew McCutchen has been part of that. I think Carlos Santana has been a part of that. And we have, I feel like, talked quite a bit about that. And I'm not terribly surprised. But I do look at this start for it, and I see things that I think can be repeatable over time. I don't know what their current winning percentage is. I know they're 16-7, but whatever that is. Well, let's pull up the old calculator here and let's do it. 16 divided by 23, 696. I don't expect them to win 70% of their games this season. I don't think anybody does. But do I expect them to play well enough using the formula they are now? I do. I don't see why, their starting rotation can't be pretty darn good. I don't see why David Bednar, Colin Holderman, Dwayne Underwood Jr., and Robert Stevenson can't provide a pretty good lockdown bullpen. Why they can't have enough offense to get by. I mean, I don't see them being top 5, top 10 in like OPS and slug, but middle third of the league, sure. I think that's reasonable. So I look at that and I zoom out a little bit and I think this team was supposed to make progress this season. It's taken 23 games, and I think you would be hard-pressed to push back against the narrative that they haven't made progress. And there's like 92 negatives in there, but, they look better, man. They look better. Give them credit.
Well, I mean, you also got to talk about their defense. It's been phenomenal.
Yes,
I mean, across the board.
Defense and base running.
Yeah, defensive base running. And we kind of knew going in the base running was going to be, top-notch, but they had to get on base. And I use Jack Swinsky right now, and the way he's walking, especially against lefties, it's changing his complete season. Being able to take the walk. We saw Cruz before he got hurt. Even Castro's taking good at bats. These guys are taking good at bats. So that's the one thing that really stands out that you may not see. You just watch the Reds for 4 games, Mackey. How many at bats seem like they were thrown away?
Right.
They're leaving their zone. They don't have a good approach, and part of that's because our pitching is really, really good right now. But another part of that is they're not so convicted by what they're trying to do that they'll leave. They're like, oh, I'm not going to get my pitch, which is completely false because most of the time guys are going to miss. Every now and then you just got to tip your cap. But you look at the series in general, Reynolds didn't do much, and obviously he went on the bereavement list. Hope everything's okay. And Kutch didn't do much, even though he hit the ball hard. That means other guys are stepping up, and that's what I see this team constantly being able to do is like, as long as they don't all fall, you still have Kutch and Santana getting on base constantly, and you have a lot of guys that have the ability to cause chaos. And when you can do that on the base pass, you're going to see more errors. You're going to see more fumbles. You're going to see more mistakes by the other team. And that's what we've gotten to see. So it's been really fun. I mean, I would say it's probably been the most fun I've had in years just watching baseball.
Yeah. Since your playing days.
Yeah, probably so.
It's the most fun I've had covering it, bar none. It has been so good for me because this is why I went into this job. And I wrote this column at the beginning of the season. Like, I was jealous seeing what the atmosphere around the baseball team was like 13, 14, 15. I was on hockey and seeing what this city could be like with a winner. And I think fans are starting to sort of allow them in, embrace this team. I think the more people who watch the Pirates are really, they can get down with this style of baseball, right? Like, fundamentally sound, you're exciting, you're running, you're pushing the pace. This scrappy group, nobody expects to do anything. And they're just fun, right? They're just fun guys. Like, Carlos Santana has a jacket that he wears around with patches on it. You've got a sword, you've got Pikachu, you've got all kinds of crap and different dances and jumps and celebrations. And like, this is what it should be. This is it. This is fun. And it's just been so reaffirming to me. And I think probably for other fans that love the sport, just what this city can be like whenever there is a winner. So cool. I want to pause it there though, Fort, because we have some stuff we want to get to.
I do want to share something. You may have seen this real quick.
No, you're not allowed to share it. We're moving on.
Yeah, you have to. Jeff Passan of MLB wrote the Pittsburgh Pirates. I think that's how you say his name. Pittsburgh Pirates are 16-7. They won 7 consecutive games with a run differential of 45-15. Yes, those games were against Colorado and Cincinnati. They are still victories, and while this may not be sustainable, they have the 3rd best record in all of baseball right now. Tampa Bay's ahead, which is crazy. But Dan Zangrilli, I thought this was an unbelievable way to go about this. He said, "Okay, cool.
I saw this, yeah.
My turn. The Pirates are 16-7 despite losing to long-term or season-ending injury. Their unicorn, 35 and 35 shortstop, meaning 35 homers, 35 stolen bases. Their number 3 starting pitcher, a career 767 OPS left-handed bat. And short-term, 2 opening day relievers within the span of 3 weeks, and they're still winning." And I think that is a really cool way to put it because it's the next man up mentality. There's no ego. The fact that Castro's Cruz's best friend, I thought there's going to be pressure there ultimately, but no, he's gone out. He's played good shortstop, made a couple of mistakes, but he's had great at bats. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is these guys continually put their arm around each other no matter what. Bay made the air and center Kutch's first guy to greet him, and he ended up having a good game. It's just one of those things that you don't see often in the major leagues. A lot of times there's a lot of individualism. And right now it just seems like there's a collective group that, Hurdle used to say one heartbeat, but legitimately seems like they have one heartbeat. I just thought that was cool.
Yeah, no doubt. Dan did a great job, and Jeff Passan works for ESPN, not to shortchange him. Give the guys their just due. But it's neat seeing people talk about no, I don't mean it that way. I just
no. I read all these guys and I try to keep up, but I can't. So yes, but nationally, that's the storyline right now. Like
nationally, they're actually getting paid attention to.
They are, but they're like, oh, this isn't sustainable, blah blah blah. But good for them. Like good for the little guys. And it's like, well, listen, like Tampa Bay's doing it. The Orioles are a top 5 team right now too. Like it's not like the small markets aren't just playing great baseball. And I'm not saying
they don't care, man. You know why that stuff is the way it is.
Yeah, because they want to cover their top teams. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Pirates don't move their needle, and so they don't.
So I want to get louder and louder, Mackie. That's all I'm saying.
I don't
get
care.
Louder and louder.
Let the national people sleep on them, man. For the local guys, that works out better for us.
Amen.
I mean, that's a whole different conversation. National media versus local media, and participating with local media. And that, you know what, dude? Like, that's one of the things I like so much about this team. My dog is trying so hard, by the way, to get on the podcast. So we're going to try. Bring him in. Bring him in. Yeah, What's up, buddy? Hey, Jared. Oh, man.
He's like, nah, I'm camera shy. Not today.
He tapping over here and trying to get on camera, and now he gets shy. So, all right. Anyway, no, one of the things that I love so much about this group, Fort, is how accessible, respectful, friendly, just themselves to media. And I mean, you are a form of that. I am a form of that. National guys are a form of that. And that's really neat to see. And they're very respectful toward us. And so I like that. And it's frankly a very likable group. Like they're obviously, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess tight, close, whatever, they have that bond within the clubhouse amongst themselves, but they're very easy to root for externally. And I think fans are finding that out as they sort of tiptoe in the water a little bit and find out what these Pirates are all about. Maybe they click on a game. But that was a good job by Zangrilli pointing that out as well. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, you've had some good ones too lately. Don't get me wrong, but I figured since we were talking, I'd bring up Zangrilli because that was really cool. And I love people that are fighting back that, maybe have been against it a little bit over the last couple of years and didn't see this coming. Yeah, it's cool to see because you can see their perspective completely shifting. Me and you were kind of bullish from the get-go of how good this team could be.
Yeah,
and I think we're super excited and super stoked that they're playing so well.
Yep, makes it easier, man. I mean, I explain to people all the time, like I have to write. Whether they win or lose, it doesn't really change my job, and I am legitimately not a Penguins or Pirates fan. I was not a Penguins fan, but I like when my job is made easier, and it's made easier by playing good ball and having storylines to dig into. So I appreciate that. And speaking of which, Fort, so we're gonna sort of make this a by request show, or we're gonna take some questions. And I really like these things. One of my favorite things to do in the newspaper world is to do chats every week and sort of have like a rapid fire interaction with fans. And so we're going to run down a list, and I should say readers more so than fans. They're not fans of me. They're fans of the team, but they're reading me. So you tweeted something earlier, and we're going to run down a list of questions and kind of, do, what do you want to call it? A little popcorn action, little.
Ooh, we'll call this the popcorn segment. I like it.
I like it, Fort. So that's the goal for tonight. You ready to rock?
Let's do this.
All right, let's do it. From your point of view, this is John. He asks, what's the biggest difference with Vince Velasquez the last few starts? Let me get a last name. Nope, we just got John at JGore492. But what do you see as the biggest difference with Vince? And you started off, and then I'm going to offer my 2 cents.
First off, simplification is the first thing that I can tell you right now. The curveball's disappeared. He's blended the slider, which he throws one horizontal, one on top, which has more depth down, which is awesome. That's kind of replaced that knuckle curve. No more sinker. Yep. So he's really a 3-pitch guy, but he's using them multiple different ways. And I think the next step is the changeup. I think it's taken a huge step forward. It's got a lot more life, and it's going to become almost like a sinker for him. And when he runs it in, Mackey, to righties, it's been phenomenal. Yep. Phenomenal. And then a little bit behind the scenes is talking to him. He has a hard time sometimes overstriding, landing too hard. We talked about this last time. And he's been able to land with the softer knee and land softer on that front foot, more on the ball instead of on the heel, or too much on that toe. So, yeah, he's cleaned up some mechanics, but he's continued to, in the bullpen, really try to map his pitches the right way to create the right shapes, and the consistency's there. And that's the biggest thing for him, and it always has been. And he hasn't had to use the fastball at the top of the zone as much as I thought he would need it. It's been fun to see. What about you?
It's got some nice ride on it, too. I think it's there. He needs it. To me, it's the slider. It's discovering different ways to handle the slider, keeping it in zone, throwing it for swing and miss, throwing it, frankly, to get contact. I just like his ability to play with it. To me, let me back up. Vince baffles me in a way I've never seen a pitcher be able to lose it and find it as quickly as he has. Well said. I feel like the slider is sort of kind of a get me right pitch, in that he's been able to, if he does lose it, to kind of lean on that a little bit, and that gets him back in the zone very quickly. So, do
you feel like the slider that he gets on top of is the one that brings him back in the zone? That's the one I feel like, because sometimes he gets on the side of the ball with that horizontal movement.
I haven't looked that specifically for it. I'm not going to lie. But I've like his back-to-back walks, and then he goes slider heavy to get back in it. There were a couple like get behind the count and shock, no shock. Here comes a slider. I guess I should look and see which kind of slider he's throwing it throwing in that situation, but I don't know. That's also why they pay you the big bucks. All right, so we got another one. Pirate Queen Banshee, who I believe is responsible for the sword that the Pirates are swinging around. But how is Connor Joe making his mark on this team? I'll take that first, and I'll let you follow up for it. But I think there's a couple things with Connor dating back to spring training. In spring, I was very impressed by Connor and how he went about his business and sort of setting an example. I like, from a media perspective, it's a pain in the butt because he's tough to nail down. Like, you can never get Connor Joe because he's never in the same place for more than like 2 or 3 minutes. He's always going somewhere, lifting, preparing, doing something. But I respect it from a fellow employee or, somebody who wants to work at his job and do really well. So I like that. And then as far as what the Pirates are trying to accomplish offensively, I love the way Connor Joe controls an at-bat. He's going to see pitches. He's going to trust his eye. He's going to work deep in counts. And if the Pirates are going to be any good, they have to do that stuff. And I think that approach, whether it's from Kutch, Santana, Joe, other guys, that is absolutely rubbed off.
So for me, I'm going to double down on what you said. I watched him work the other day, Mackey, and he puts himself second. And veteran guys that are willing to constantly take a back seat to all the, you want to say, mainstays, right? So he's a guy that he came in and he had a responsibility. He knew he was going to be a role guy, a bench guy, a starter. It was going to kind of go all over the place, but he had to be ready. And that's why he's running around like crazy. I know the feeling. He does it well. He controls his mind and his body very, very well prior to the game. Even though he's running around, he gets the things done he needs to get done. He spends time with the guys he needs to spend time with. And he's always doing a great job of allowing whoever's around him to take the lead. And it's not because he's not leading. That actually is the way he's leading.
Yeah.
I saw him with Swinsky, and he's pumping Swinsky up just very calmly. He's like, hey, man, I'm just following you. And then Swinsky left, and I saw him do extra work. And I thought that was so awesome. That's something I used to take pride in, is like, how can I make my team better without any credit, out any understanding of anybody else? But I know that, that's going to help. Swinsky went out and hit a double. We ended up, winning that baseball game. And whether he had a part of it or not, he did affirm him in his confidence and in his belief of what he was doing. And that's what separates him and a lot of these guys. But he's very, very good at it. And being a former first-round draft pick, if I'm not mistaken, sometimes that's hard to do because they're always trying to grab onto something, whether it's the talent they used to have, but he's settled into who he is now.
Yep.
And that's so cool to see. It's very hard to do.
Yeah. He's just a good person.
He is. I mean, he has great hair too.
He does have great hair.
He does. I don't know what he puts in it, but it's like shiny during the game. You notice that?
I don't know, but I smell a Mackey pregame question coming up. That,
I mean, he's got to put something. Yeah. I mean, he should get sponsored at least. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. All right. Couple more. Scablin or D-Mags. Some of these Twitter handles, man, I'll tell you what,
they're tough.
Mackey PG, SC Tom, appreciate any updates on Endy, any update on why Jared Jones went on the IL. For everybody asking, this is something I think people who follow Pirates coverage get, but Todd Tomczyk, the director of sports medicine, talks to the media every Wednesday, and that's generally where information relative to injuries is concentrated. So you will see me and other people on Wednesday tweeting out, writing about different injury updates from Todd. So we will expect to get those on Wednesday, a little bit early for that. Ethan Fisher asks, how many of the Pirates' next 12 games do they need to win? Dodgers, Nationals, Rays, Blue Jays, for you to believe that they can keep this level of play going? I have a couple different answers to that for it. I'll start. One is, I don't know if any of it matters, other than I don't want to see them go 2-10. Then I would, maybe believe that this is a mirage. If they go 6-6, I don't know if I believe anything that I didn't before. And even if they go 10-2, I don't know if I'm going to say all of a sudden that like they're World Series contenders. I think that's hard right now with the sample size being so small. But I will say this, that I think they play a couple of interesting opponents coming up. The Nationals are sort of the outlier in that group, but I want to see how they fare against the Dodgers. I want to see how they fare against the Rays. I want to see how they fare against the Blue Jays. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how they stack up against some of these teams. again, none of the games or the whole like 12 pack of them is going to tell me anything that I feel super great about, because I think the bottom can fall out at any time still. And I do think they're going to taper at some point. But if they're hanging with these bigger teams, boy, do I feel better. I already feel good about the progress that this group has made. What about you?
I want to see him compete. You know, even the losses this year, you've looked up and be like, man, we could have won that game, but we didn't play bad. We just lost a baseball game. That's what I want to see.
There's been a lot of that for it. There's been a lot of that.
There has, and I think it's going to be interesting because who we have going against the Dodgers, you know, the next couple of days, you know, Keller, Contreras, Oviedo, not in that order. I think it's Oviedo, Contreras, or excuse me, Oviedo, Keller, Contreras, if I'm not mistaken. And then that's the same group that's going to pitch in Tampa Bay, more than likely. Like, I want to see those guys compete against the best because those are our guys, you know, and I think it's going to be an opportunity to learn, especially Tampa is going to be very, very cool to see. They still haven't lost at home. But I don't think this team's going to be, they're not going to be intimidated. And I think if they play their game, we're going to see some fun baseball. You know, the Dodgers are starting to heat up, but we don't face Kershaw. We don't face May, who I think is probably their two best in regards to stuff. So we have a chance to, you know, get on the board early, you know, especially against Syndergaard. He's a guy that he's got to throw to contact now. And our guys, most of the guys they've seen like that, they've hit pretty good. So I think as long as they stay within themselves, it doesn't matter. Same to you. It's like, I think baseball's ebb and flows. I think it's how they respond to every single win and loss.
Yeah.
Because it is day to day, you know, and eventually that stud in AAA Ortiz is going to be up here throwing bullets too. Give some of these guys a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to see Ortiz. He threw really well. I believe quality start in AAA his last time out. He's been throwing strikes. Everything I hear about the changeup has been really good.
It's got life. I was watching it the other day, Mackie. It's got life.
Good. Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with you that I think about Luis and where is he going to slot into this rotation. And I mean, did they pump the brakes on Hill? Did they pump the brakes on Rowe? I hate asking stuff like that because I feel like that's what's going to beget an injury, and there will be a natural spot for it more than likely. Maybe even Oviedo, do you pump the brakes on him? But I don't know. We're not there yet. I wouldn't force it. But it is a little bit weird that the rotation has been so good at this point. It might be tough to get Ortiz in there.
And two, they're letting these guys go, which is very different. You know, we've already seen
compared to the past. Yeah,
compared to the past, like the protection seems to have dissolved a little bit, and I love it. I think every guy has a threshold. The other day when they took out Mitch Keller was absolutely perfect because you could see the mechanics falling out of whack. You could see the arm lagging, him missing high and right, and that's usually a sign that he's going the wrong direction. But Velasquez, I was baffled they kept him in, and I was like, this is perfect. He still looked fresh. He still looked clean. Same thing with Rich Hill. They took him out in the fifth. Yeah, they could have thrown him back out there. Possibly. He looked okay. But, you know, I think it's really, really cool that they've opened up that door because that's still not a door that's opened up across the league. But I think it's starting to be opened more and more because they're understanding the biomechanics of everybody is completely different. We're all built different. And some guys are going to fade faster than others.
Can you imagine Whitey Herzog not taking out a pitcher because of his biomechanics or something? I'm not disagreeing with the move, but I'm like, I'd love
There's a gut to it, man.
Earl Weaver. Like, excuse me, sir, the biomechanics seem to be lagging here. I'll tell you, get lost, dude.
Yeah, there's something to be said about just a straight competitor, a bulldog on the mound. You know, Rich Hill's 43. I'm going to go to war with him any day he wants me to because the way he competes, period.
And with Rich, that'll be the Civil War, I believe, and maybe the Revolutionary War.
He fought in those. Yes, he fought in those. Yeah.
He was drafted in the Franco-Prussian War.
He's a former general. No big deal.
Oh, boy. All right. Tyler Hernley asks, first off, where can we find it? Glad you asked, Tyler. You can follow our Twitter accounts where we will tweet the link, or you can go to Apple Podcasts or anywhere else that you get your podcasts. Should be fairly readily accessible. This one's for you. This is right in your wheelhouse. What exactly have Jack Sawinski and Rodolfo Castro done with their approaches, swings to cut down on their strikeouts so far? Explain it to me, brother. What do you got?
So there's a couple things. Both guys made adjustments in spring. Sawinski tried to shorten everything up to be able to get to the fastball at the top of the zone. And I think once he hit those home runs at the top of the zone, his last 2 home runs, it changed everything for him. I think 1, it got confidence. Obviously, he hit 3 in a row, 4 in a matter of about 7 games. And then he started getting off speed down in the zone. And when he gets that and he doesn't miss it, he's a force to be reckoned with. And I think he's coming into his own, understanding who he is. And he's trying to understand that, especially with lefties, they're going to show him in the zone and then leave the entire time. So he is almost taking an exact opposite approach as you normally would. There's no 2-strike approach because he's trying to narrow in his focus in a small area so he doesn't leave the zone. And that's really helped him with lefties. So I'm excited to see where he goes. He has bought in completely. His work is really, really cool. Like I told you last podcast, he was hitting balls coming up at him from a lower angle from a machine. The other day, they were doing foam balls and they were walking up. It started at 90. They got about 22 feet from the machine. So it's probably 110. And I mean, you're just talking about barrel finders constantly. And then Castro, they spread him out in spring training. I thought his right hand swing's always been good. He's got a lot of power, makes more contact from that side from the left. He showed some huge power, but huge swing and miss. He was really narrow last year, would fall into the ball, couldn't stay behind it. So they spread him out. They used comps similar to Soto and Lindor, that type of wide, because they're both built the same. All 3 of them are very similar size. Lindor obviously being a little bit skinnier, but he bought in spring training. The swing and miss went down, and it continued to go down as we went into season. And I think he's starting to understand who he is. Every now and then he still gets out of his realm and swings at just about anything, but you want to make sure you don't take away who he is. He does have the ability to hit some bad baseballs too. So I think he's just learning himself over and over again. I've told you time and time, Mackie, there's guys that just have an animal instinct, and he's one of them. Like, he doesn't really understand maybe the nuances or have the baseball IQ that other guys do right now, which is a huge advantage for him, but he has an instinct that you can't teach. He has a freedom that you honestly don't understand. And some of the guys I've played with that have that are special. Corey Dickerson was one of them. Then he became a cerebral player later on in his career. But when you have that, it's something that your brain doesn't really ever get in the way. And he's going to be like that, I think, his entire career. What about you?
I'm going to leave this one to you. I don't know that stuff on the, like, what they sort of did with Castro early on in spring. I mean, that's generally stuff they're not going to allow to, they ain't talking to me about that stuff. They're going to talk to you about that stuff, right, which is fine. Sawinski to me is somebody who's, at least from my perch, I see him maturing a lot in what he is and what he can be. His ability to control an at bat has been much more noticeable lately. Again, I'm not breaking any news here. I feel like it's an oversimplification. Well,
I have a question for you on Sawinski. So I have a theory. I haven't gotten a chance to look into it. Guys that come from small towns, or especially up north, I always give them more time because they haven't seen the breaking balls. They haven't seen that. So same concept if you get him to the big leagues too fast, right? So he gets the big leagues last year, maybe when he's not necessarily ready. Yeah, it was a convenience thing and it went well, but I think it takes time, whether it's velocity or spin, for guys like that, because they haven't seen it. I saw.
But I mean, how do you explain his magical start to last summer? I mean, he was crushing the ball.
Well, he's hitting 180 for the first 2 weeks, though. You know what I mean?
How long did that continue?
It almost went 2 weeks, but he was facing Corbin Burns, Woodruff. He was facing just ridiculous arms. Him and who else came up with him at that time? Marcano. Him and Marcano just were facing ridiculous arms. By the way, I really like what I've seen from him this year.
He's been solid.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's just a theory I have. Mike Trout, developed a little bit slower and people missed on him. He was the 24th pick. And I think that's very common for guys, that are up north. Like, even around here, Mackie, guys play 20 games in high school. My high school is going to play 55.
Yeah.
It's just a big difference. So I think I always think about that and give them a little bit more grace, and it usually plays out in the long run.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I didn't realize, I guess, early on Sawinski was like that bad. And I'm just looking up, his first 37, he hit 235 at 8 homers. struck out a pretty decent amount, 35 and 128 plate appearances. That's high. And then it kind of tapered for him. Really went into it, had the 3-homer game. Yeah, I mean, it's just I see Jack as somebody who is still sort of growing into himself and realizing what he can do. Maybe that's the Northerner thing, maybe not. And I mean, for that matter, so is Rodolfo Castro.
Yeah.
And with Castro, to me, I'll let you speak on the sort of the baseball mechanics and whatnot. Like, far be it from me to disagree with you. We see a little bit more of these guys as people, and you watch them on the field and whatever. And I mean, I see a kid that's still just kind of growing up, and there's nothing wrong with that. And he's been thrust into a difficult situation with Cruz, and I have a lot of respect for how he's stepped up here, and he looks more mature and more focused than he ever has before in the past. And that's great. And that's what you should expect out of somebody his age, whether he's a professional baseball player or an accountant. Like, you're just looking for somebody to take a nice step in life, and good for Castro for doing that. I've just liked both of those guys growing up and finding a new version of themselves. So, okay, I'm going to move on. I'm going to try to keep us on task here. Mark at Yinzer Motts, I think that's right. Will Brian Reynolds get an extension anytime soon? It's like all Yins were talking about, and now it's silence. See, that's all we were talking about, Ford. All we're talking about, Brian Reynolds getting an extension. What's going on? Well, Mark, these things take some time. I still do think they're going to get something done, man. I don't know about you, Ford. I feel like they would have waved the white flag by now if they weren't going to be able to overcome this. I think there's certainly some gamesmanship being played. Neither side wants to sort of move off of its mark. I see a path forward here, though. And we talked a little bit, I think the last podcast, if not the last one, the one before that, like how this gets done. Honestly, get Nutting and Reynolds in a room, and I bet they come out with a deal. I bet it looks something like 7 years, $100 million. That's a figure that I'm not the only one floating that. But I think there's still a pathway to get this done. I don't know what it looks like in terms of an opt-out, a no movement clause. Like, I think Reynolds camp is going to want something. So maybe there's some protection there, which I don't know. I mean, that's kind of like divergent opinions, right? Like, you want a no movement, but an opt-out. What? You want the ability to go, but you want the ability to stay too? I don't know what that is, but I just think when you strip away all the extraneous crap, at the root of it, there's an owner who wants a player here, and there's a player who wants to be here. But there are certain impediments in terms of maintaining precedent, what Reynolds camp wants, et cetera, that has sort of kiboshed this thing. But in the end, I still see it getting done. Where do you fall on it?
I couldn't agree more. I think it'll get done, and I think it helps that around the league we're seeing guys sign. Because that creates a sense of urgency in the front office. Seeing Hunter Green sign probably put a little sense of urgency to maybe sign Keller or do some things and get some things moving, because that's why you have an agent. You don't even have to hear anything. You understand it from the get-go, where it could go, where it could be within a year, where it could be in 3 years, or when you become a free agent. You understand all that because you get all that information as soon as you hit that arbitration for the first time. So there's no real surprises except whatever your agent comes back with. So I think, there could be a lot of movement over the next, 3 to 6 months before the offseason. I hope so. I think it'll create some buzz and some excitement. And I think if nothing else, if Reynolds and Nutting got in the room, they'll get it done. And I think if it's not 7 years, just sign a deal. Understand you're going to be here for this long. If it's a no trade clause or a partial no trade clause, which I think would work, I don't think the opt-out's ever going to work now that I understand both sides. I get it. So it's one of those things that's just got to have some reasoning and some understanding with the two guys it affects the most, and that's Nutting and Reynolds.
Yeah. I understand why Reynolds camp would want an opt-out. Certainly, with the Pirates' recent history, and you want to try to protect yourself, and players are getting these things. The only difficult part with Reynolds in his situation is just he doesn't have a ton of leverage here. He doesn't. I mean, the Pirates have him come hell or high water through 2025. And if they don't want to do anything, they really don't have to do anything. Are you going to pay him this amount of money and absorb $100 million worth of risk for the upside being, he plays well and he goes somewhere else. He plays well and he wants more money. I wouldn't do it if I were the Pirates. I don't begrudge them for not doing it.
Yeah.
At the same time, like I think it would send a very good message to the fan base by bringing Reynolds here. I think their contract offer, if you take it at this point at 100 mil, 7 years, it's pretty darn impressive. You get that done, that's going to show. It's going to show they're serious. It's going to show they're built for the long haul. I think other free agents sort of look at that, and your starting point is keep Brian Hayes and Brian Reynolds. And at this point, O'Neal Cruz under team control. You look at Mitch Keller and some of the pitching that they have. I think it's a very important deal for them to get done, but I don't think they should make a stupid deal, which is sort of what we're talking about here and why it hasn't gotten done. I do think the opt-out after 4 would be a stupid one for them. Okay, moving on. Al Scott, a friend of both of us, Fort, very good man, goes down to fantasy camp all the time. We love Al. The pitch clock has forced me to pay closer attention. The amount of missed calls in the strike zone seems to be getting greater, though, or at least more noticeable. Robo home plate umpires. What do you think, man? Are we going to see robotic umpires? I think we are, and I think it could be as early as next season, but I don't know if I'm crazy. Where do you fall on it?
Did you see the fall league? I think it was this past fall league. They did the challenge.
Yep.
I think that's coming. I don't think
posited to me as well.
I read an article, Manfred saying that he likes the human element enough to keep the umpire there, and they're really good. Like they're scoring 95, 96%, and they're not missing stuff in the zone. And if you remember in the 90s growing up, or even the early 2000s, the zone was huge.
Yeah.
What Maddox and Glavine and Smoltz got was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think if we put it in perspective, the zone is actually, if we took that box away, which has no relevancy to the strike zone.
Yeah.
It's a box we put there. The AT&T Sportsnet puts there. So it has no relevancy. And if you go back and look at, some of this stuff, and it's a huge advantage for the guys catching. I mean, I just looked at it the other day. I mean, we already have Hedges at a plus on run saved by strikes.
Yep.
And the biggest thing is he keeps strikes. And I think taking that away would stink. I think it would not be good for the game. And I love a good argument. I think it's entertaining. I think it's fun. But I do think it'd be cool to have them challenged. There's not a lot of accountability with umpires. So it'd be cool to be able to challenge them. If I'm hitting and I know it's a ball, which has happened time and time again, I'm like, tap that head. And immediately they should have on the scoreboard the zone show, and ball. See you later. I'm walking first base, big guy. Thank you. And maybe you did a couple of games.
I worry if that becomes too much of a presentation.
Well, that's what the game's. There's a lot of more of that coming in the game, because then it brings that excitement. Like, ooh, what's going to happen? Is he right? Is he wrong? But if they do it immediately,
like he was a little circus-like for it.
Yeah, of course. So is the pitch clock and everything else, but it's where the game is. It's where it's going. I mean, we have Papa John's pizza boxes as bases now, right?
Man, I would rather just start there. Like, why do I need to have an umpire in the middle of it just to say that there's some sort of human element there? But in the end, really, it's the computer making any difficult calls. Let's just have the computer make the call.
It won't stop there, though. That's the problem. Like, let them bring in the line technology first. Cool. Like, no more fair and foul calls for the umpires. Very easy. They already have the technology. The alignment on the field, let's bring that in. They did that in the broadcast meeting. Like, the technology that already exists, yes. The automated strike zone and putting an earpiece in the umpire's ear to call balls and strikes
already exists.
It does, but like, just let them call it.
So it already exists, but let's just not use it.
Correct.
Okay.
Let's keep it all. They don't throw enough strikes.
So it's the pitcher's fault.
No, I think it's just in general. Like, I love the game. I miss the times where a guy can be painting and he earns 3 to 4 inches. And I get it, but like, how robotic do we want the game? Right? Eventually it's going to get to the point where it's like, there's no human element. If you keep taking everything away from the human beings, like they don't even like to, at first, they don't even want them to celebrate. Huh?
If the human element is stinking, why do I want the human element?
They've gotten better almost every single year.
You think the umpiring has gotten better this year?
I'm not saying it's gotten better, but it's not any worse.
You just did. You just said they've gotten better every single year. This is a year, so you're saying that it's gotten better.
Anybody that wants to know how good they are, go follow Umpire Scorecard It shows every single time. And we've gotten more an advantage almost every single game because of who we have behind the plate. And that's who I don't want it to affect. Hedges becomes non-existent without his ability to receive, and the catching in general completely change. Like, it'll be just somebody back there that can throw and hit. Because eventually, if they go automated strike zone, they're going to go automated in their ear with a guy up top that went to Harvard calling pitches.
I know.
It's just not going to stop. Like, that's I get the reasoning, but it's not going to stop, and they'll find a way to combat it too. I guarantee it.
All right. Well, I hope you're right. And Fort, honestly, I'm not trying to be a grump here. Like, one of my favorite things about pitching is you get outside corner, then you get a little more, and then you get a little more, and then you get a little bit more. Like, I think of Tom Glavine doing that.
Exactly.
He was somebody I loved how much he would just sort of expand this. Maddox would do it too, of course. And, you back up a two-seamer in on a righty or something like that, and you're just playing and you get that call because of who you are. But I feel like you've got to earn it. Right now, it's too scattershot. Dude's just calling a strike. It's like, oh, well, I'm Angel Hernandez, and that ball was low, and it looks like a strike. Close enough. Like, did he do anything to earn it? Has he been working that part of the zone? Like, I'm fine with expanding the zone. I'm not fine just having, strike calls be like a game of bingo. You just never know what's coming up.
Well, you should follow the godfather of catching, Jerry Weinstein. And there's been studies, guys that have better relationships now with the umpires, they get more pitches. And all that kind of goes away. And I think if we shared more of that, because they're trying to do the best they can.
Have you ever talked to Hedges about his binder?
No, I should.
Ask him about his binder. You'll love it.
I will.
I wrote about this in spring. So I think it was Clayton Richard, got him this leather binder. And so he keeps in there his scouting reports on umpires, specifically for pitch framing, how, like, a guy's cadence and how he calls a strike, how he sets up with certain pitches, what worked, what didn't, notes, lefty, righty. It's like this whole complicated thing that he compiles over the course of a season with his pitchers, individualized by pitcher. It's really cool, man. Like, if he walked you through that, I'm sure you guys could totally nerd out. I was nerding out just looking at it. I felt bad asking him. I'm like, I'm not going to report specifics here. Like, I certainly respect what you have in here. I'm just curious. He's like, oh, no. Like, I have this, and this is how I break it down. Then I do that. It was so cool, dude.
It's awesome. And that's what I don't want to leave. Like, I guess I get to see more of it than the average fan. And that's what I don't want to leave. And I've gotten really close to some umpires, and I watched a lot of my favorite dudes retire this past year because of all the new changes, everything that's kind of being taken over. And I just want to slow it down.
Yeah.
Like, just slow it down a bit. Let the game kind of play itself out. I think we're in a really cool place right now, and let's see where it goes. So if we bring it all in all at once, I just feel like it's just too much. And, people are really falling in love with where we're at now, bringing the automated strike zone.
Yeah.
That means something else is coming right after it, because it takes, all that pressure off the umpire behind the plate. So what's he going to focus on now? More. It's going to be something. I don't know what it is, but I don't like something that's been the same for so long to change.
Yeah.
And it affects them too, because eventually they're going to be out of a job.
Yeah. All right, Fort, we have one question left in our Q&A session. This one comes from at North Shore 9, I believe. Has Jason stepped up and asked the tougher questions yet, Fort?
Wow.
So I don't know. Has Jason stepped up and asked the tougher questions? I don't understand what that means. Maybe you can explain it to our listeners and viewers.
My North Shore 9 boys, listen. Mackie is one of the best in the business. He does a great job. He asks great questions. I do sometimes think in the past, like, comparative to New York, comparative to LA, the big markets, we're not as tough, but that's fine.
We're not.
We are different, and I've come to respect that. And if you ask the questions, these men that are leading the way, whether you ask Oscar, Coach Haynes, Shelton, Sherrington, they may give you a roundabout answer, but they're going to answer the question. They're never going to run. And that's what I respect. And Mackie, you're always willing to ask the question.
I can always do a better job. We all could, man. But I will say that I'm never going to be like a reporter from New York, or these guys are never going to face a Boston style media interrogation. Like, it's just not happening. I mean, it's not the culture around the team. I don't think I'm surprising anybody watching this or listening to it. But the idea that like certain questions don't get asked, or we're like scared to ask questions. It's funny when you explain things to people about what you ask, and they're like, they still get mad. They're like, I can ask the question, and if the answer sucks, that doesn't mean that I did my job wrong.
Correct.
Like I use the example with Bob Nutting. Like, I've asked Nutting multiple times, like, why don't you spend more money? Why are you running the team a certain way? The Padres are doing this. Why can't the Padres do that? And they're like ins and outs of it. Like, is that not what you would want a reporter asking the owner of the team? Like, is that not the biggest gripe with the Pirates right now? Like, they want to see them spend more money or care emotionally as much about the team as you do as fans. Or like, we're asking them about the development and how much they've changed or how much went wrong after the last push or whatever. Like, the questions have been asked, I promise you. But whatever.
And I've gotten to see more of that. I've gotten to see more of that over the last 6 weeks. And the reality of it is like, when you win, there's more transparency too, Mackie.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think that's something that's kind of boggled my mind, is like, it's not that they don't want to share. It's not that they aren't willing to share. Sometimes they're not ready, but most of the time it's the fact that like they've got so much going on that they've created a template inside their head of talking points, and they won't leave that unless they have the time. Seems like winning creates more communication, more time.
Well, because everybody wants to get out and celebrate good news.
Absolutely.
Nobody wants to wear it when things aren't going well. And I mean, the Pirates went through a stretch where Nutting and Travis Williams were not terribly communicative, and they should be criticized for not speaking to fans more frequently than they did. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and defend that. Like, I think that's something that they don't necessarily realize, that they speak to me and they think of it like, why do I need to do that? Or why do I need to, or I don't want to deal with Mackey or Stumpf or Beer Temple or Gorman or, any of the beat writers around the team. And, maybe we ask questions that they don't like, but I mean, it's not us. Your answers are being read by fans. And even if you don't think they're interesting, if you don't think that they're, anything groundbreaking for you, like somebody who's putting their faith, their money, their disposable time into your product, like they want to hear your voice. They want to hear you responding to questions from us with a discernible direction, because it gives them confidence with which they're, where they're spending their money and their time and their effort. So anyway, that it's actually a joke. I mean, this is a thing you said one time on a North Shore 9.
Yeah, and I got to learn.
Around the team don't ask the tough questions. So we've actually been like breaking down this question seriously when the North Shore 9 guys are
No, but they need to know, because it's your first year officially, only covering baseball, which has changed everything because you're enthralled in it. So you've been able, and I've even,
this is my first year only covering baseball for
like all in. Like you still wrote some other segments this year. Still, you're still a busy dude, but like I'm saying, your 1000% focus should be on baseball. You get pulled a bunch of different directions because of who you are, and you're good at what you do. So that's just the reality of it. But
around since 2019, brother.
Yeah, but still covering this, covering that, doing this. But like, I love where you're at right now. I will say this: if you have not seen the Terry Francona, Tito, the thing they just did on MLB, you should. And how he does media is maybe as good as anybody. It was one of my favorite things to watch. He's who he is, and he didn't change. And it came from when he was in Double-A coaching Michael Jordan. He had to deal with national media, day in, day out. What's going on? Why are you doing this? How's this going? And I think, some people have never had to deal with that. They don't know what to do. I think where we're at now, national coverage, guys like you constantly asking really good questions, and other people wanting to do stories, we're pushing the envelope forward.
Yeah.
When you're not winning, you're getting asked the same questions a lot.
I will give credit where it's due. Who has gotten better at some of this stuff is Derek Shelton. He really has.
He's been really good this year.
Yes, he has. Yes,
he's been really good.
And I think he's sort of found his speed. And I think, he has found his speed, and reporters have found their speed with dealing with him. And what I mean by that is, like, I don't think Shelton ever wants to say anything like incendiary or controversial. That's just not his style. It's almost like the Kevin Cash in him. You know, reporters that cover the Rays will tell you, like, Kevin Cash is not a quote machine at all. But when the recorders turn off, they will sit there and talk to Kevin Cash off the record and have, you know, good information for steering stories and what they write about and what questions they ask. And it allows them to better do their job. And so that's a valuable thing. Like, people that don't understand necessarily how media works, like, you want people to be honest with you and tell you information. Now, I would rather have that than somebody who, like, is just closed off and a jerk and doesn't want to deal with me and whatever. Like, at least you can understand if somebody's going to give you off the record context. It allows you to write things that are better informed. And I'm not saying Shelton sits at the podium and, you know, reveals his life story to us. Certainly not. But, like, you go on the road, you can have a conversation with the guy and check something and say, hey, Shelton, I'm wondering this. Like, this is what I see, you know, and that's new. And you have conversations with people, and as you know, cover them more and they see you more, and, you know, that can be a more readily available thing. Anyway, I think I see Shelton, you know, at the podium and the way he jokes with people and letting more of his personality out. I can understand not wanting to say anything incendiary, but still being really good with the media, giving fans something, showing passion, showing a sense of humor. It's gotten to a very good place. I guess that's a convoluted word salad of an answer, but I feel like he's gotten better with media dealings, a lot better.
Yeah, he's gotten better all the way around, and I think the staff around him is one of the better ones I've seen. There's no ego.
Yeah.
So you have that with the players, you have that with the staff. It's really, really impressive, and they all are rooting for each other, and that's not normally the case. I've been in a lot of behind the scenes and seen some very terrible things, guys, you know, hoping for bad. And this group is different. You know, they're taking information from anybody that's going to give it to them. They're open to, you know, quality conversation. They're willing to answer tough questions, and it's fun to see. So I'm excited about where it's going, Mackie. I'm glad we did this tonight because it's fun to talk about.
It is. It really is. Yeah, and that'll be our segue out of here. We got 3 against the Dodgers this week. I'm really excited to see what the atmosphere is going to be like down at PNC. I think it's going to be electric. I really do. I want to see how this team fares. And then we go to D.C. this weekend, a place that's near and dear to my heart. Used to live there and always love going back to Nats Park. So, Fort, good to hook up with you tonight, brother. And I'll see you at the yard.
Sounds good, brother. Thank you.